Last story time was part 1, so if you didn't watch it, go watch it first, so this video will make more sense. So I struggled with depression from September of 2017 to March of 2018. It was a very rough time in my life. It got so severe that I became suicidal in February of 2018, and even came up with a plan to commit suicide in March. But I ultimately got through it, and as a result, I went through the post-depression period. This time period lasted from March 13th, 2018 to November of 2018. However, that was just only the first part of the post-depression period. Today, I'm going to discuss the post-depression period part 2. I'm Zach, and this is Storytime 21 on May 21st, 2021. Now for the backstory. I'm going to talk about why part 1 ended, as well as to talk about how part 2 began. Then, I will talk about part 2. Anyways, onto the backstory. So part 1 ended in November of 2018. The reason for this was because around this time, my motivation for swimming competitively drained completely. At this point, I was completely unmotivated to get better at swimming and didn't even want anything to do with it. It mostly came from because my coach was such an asshole, but it also kind of came due to redundancy. But that's because redundancy comes from my coach, so therefore my coach gets all the blame. I did not quit until March of 2019, which I'll get to in a minute. Another reason for part 1 ending was because of my attitude and my relationship with my freshman English teacher. So me and my English teacher did not get along very well. We had arguments about every other day, mostly because I was extremely lazy. I didn't try and I had a B in the class, and even made an A in the second course. However, my English teacher saw potential in me and encouraged me to do better, which I obviously refused to do. Since a freshman, I was very rebellious. So we argued a lot. One time in November, it got so severe that she actually had me sit by her desk for about a week. Yeah, arguments got extremely brittle. However, we'd ultimately make up, which I'll also discuss. In fact, now as a rising senior, I consider her one of the most influential teachers I've ever had. So now back to swimming. My parents knew about my disinterest in swimming, so they allowed me to go to fewer practices. It started with me only going to 3 a week, and then 2. However, when I went to fewer practices, my coach became even more of a dick, so it honestly didn't help. Now, here's where me and my mom have conflicting viewpoints, as me and my sister told them we wanted to quit. Mom was with us, as she was done with our coach's bullshit, as he was also quite mean to her simply because she allowed us to go to fewer practices. Dad, on the other hand, wanted us to continue swimming so we could get exercise. But Dad never met this coach, so he really didn't understand how bad this coach was. We would have a pretty big argument on March 10th, 2019. The argument ended when Dad said that we were going to continue swimming and that nothing would change his mind. However, his mind did change actually. I'm not sure what, but eventually he would let us quit. When I say eventually, I meant literally just 2 weeks later. More than likely, Mom talked some sense into him, and therefore he changed his mind. So before I end the backstory, I want to quickly recall the English teacher situation. So March of 2019 would be the month where we stopped arguing. I honestly don't know why, but I do believe in this month, my English teacher started to really respect me, although it would take a month later for me to respect her. So that's all the backstory you'll need to know. Now, I never mentioned being depressed in this backstory, simply because this wasn't the backstory for part 1, so if you didn't watch that video, go ahead and watch it. It'll help you understand the rest of this video much clearer. And just to clarify things, no, I was not depressed from November of 2018 to March of 2019. I just simply was not in a good state. The post-depression period part 2 was just like part 1, the result of me not being depressed anymore after March of 2018. Anyways, let's begin with the main story. So the post-depression period part 2 lasted between March 23rd, 2019 to March 15th, 2020, almost an entire year, far longer than part 1. I was a freshman when part 2 began, and I was a sophomore when part 2 ended. But the reason it would begin would be because of an announcement my dad made on March 23rd, 2019. But then it would end because of an event most of you could probably guess very easily. So let's talk about the beginning of part 2. So March 23rd, 2019, this day was absolutely fantastic. So the way my psychology works is that on some days, I'm really happy for no reason. And on other days, I'm quite sad for no reason. This day, I was really happy for no reason, but I would have a reason to be happy later on. So at around lunchtime, my dad announced that we were going to go out to eat for lunch. This really hyped me up. It also hyped me up even more when he announced where. Since it's a local restaurant, I'm not going to say its name. They have a balcony where you not only could sit and eat your food, but there was also a ring toss game. While waiting for our food, we played the ring toss game as a family. It was extremely fun. But the real fun didn't start until we were eating. So I was sipping on my cheer wine, and then Dad said he had an announcement. He said that we were going to quit swimming. I almost spat out my drink after he said that. Holy shit, he's actually letting us quit? This can't be real. Just 2 weeks ago, he said that we were not going to quit swimming, and now he's letting us do it? Unbelievable. Mom must have talked some sense into him between these 2 weeks. Needless to say that I was extremely happy after he announced this. In fact, I was so happy that I literally just as happy as I was on June 23rd, 2018, a day I consider to be one of the best days of my life. Needless to say that March 23rd, 2019 was also one of the best days of my life too. The rest of the day was rather unforgettable, but I do remember me being really happy. Before I discuss our coach's reaction to us quitting, I want to discuss the final practice we attended. This practice was on March 19th, 2019, so I believe that at this practice, my coach yelled at me for not doing a stroke properly. I can't really remember exactly, but that's probably why. I didn't swim another 50 yards, continuously doing it incorrectly. After the 50 yards, he then yells at me much louder and asks me if I want to even get better. I didn't answer him. Instead, I just swam off and continued the set. He then screams, "Zach, get the hell over here!" I still continued swimming. We didn't talk for the rest of the practice. I should also note that I didn't even know this would be my last practice. It's pretty funny and coincidental that it just so happened that it took place in my last practice. Now on the side note, I also want to mention my mom telling my coach we were quitting the team, as that honestly just proves how much of a dick he was. So mom emailed our coach letting him know that me and my sister were quitting this team. She never criticized him, but she simply said that we were just both growing tired of swimming, as it was time to move on. You know what this coach did? He never responded. Yeah, very rude and childish, but nonetheless, we're still the winners here, as this is what we wanted, so I was extremely happy. In fact, so happy I could maybe start a post-depression period part 2. And that's what happened. The post-depression period part 2 began on that day, March 23rd, 2019. But there is still one more issue, and that would be my English teacher. So me and my English teacher really stopped arguing around mid-March of 2019. I think this mostly came from her just starting to respect me more, even though I still wasn't doing my work. However, while she respected me, I still did not respect her at all. I still absolutely hated her for literally trying to make me a better student. Yeah, we both love laughing about this today, as I was just such a dumbass back then. If that doesn't prove how rebellious I was as a freshman, then I don't know what does. Anyways, around sometime in early April, my grade was sitting at a 77. So I decided to abandon my freshman stubbornness and actually try. So my first order of business was to bring this grade up. So one morning after class, I talked to my English teacher asking her what I could do to bring my grade up. She was really impressed that me, out of all people, would ask her how to bring their grade up. So she told me about a project we were doing in class. It was a class discussion about Romeo and Juliet, which is what we were reading in class. This was perfect, as I knew it would bring my grade up drastically. So now let's talk about that project. So this project would be a major turning point in terms of freshman English. So we only had to talk like a total of 4 times to make 100. I, however, spoke a total of 8 times. Maybe even more. In fact, I spoke so much, my teacher literally had to pass a note telling me to shut up so that other students could talk. Needless to say that she was very impressed, as she knew that I was ready to learn and no longer the old Zach. I transformed into a hardworking student. But even then, I still didn't respect her all that much. That attitude would change about a week later at student-led conferences, or SLCs. So these were like parent-teacher conferences, but instead of the students lead, we basically showed our parents our work and all that other shit. I was joined by my mom. My dad never attended these because he was always working during this time. So me and mom were leaving after we were done, but then my English teacher approached her. She then told my mom about how great of a student I was and how well I did on the Romeo and Juliet discussion. Now, bragging to me about how good of a student I am makes me really respect you, but when you brag to my parents or someone else about how good of a student I am, then you bet my respect for you is going to skyrocket even farther. Glaringly, that happened, as this was when I started respecting my English teacher more. So now that this situation was done, I now didn't really have any more issues to take care of. I basically could now enjoy part 2. So after that, there are a few more things for school I remember. The first I want to talk about is a massive film review for Intro to Film, a college class. Remember, I go to early college, so I'm taking both high school and college classes at the same time. So Intro to Film was a pretty shitty class, but the biggest part about it was the semester project. For our semester project, we had to write a huge, in-depth film review on a top 100 best-selling film from the 1900s. I was assigned Titanic, which is great considering I had never seen it before and really wanted to see it. The film review had to be a 10 to 22 page paper. When I was a rising sophomore, this size of a paper sounded barbaric. Now, most Storytime scripts are literally in between this length, sometimes longer, so now it doesn't really seem like much. But this paper was so big, it actually became the longest paper I had ever written up to that point. My paper was 11 pages long. What's even crazier is that I actually did it the day before it was due, so doing it in one day was definitely an achievement in itself. I made an 82 or 83 on it, as I'm not sure though, but I was very happy with the grade, as it was the highest grade I ever got on a film review up to that point. On the topic of film reviews, I want to talk about a film review not for film, but for Intro to Communications. Now, unlike film, Communications was a great class, as our professor was really good. So in class, we watched a movie called Homeless to Harvard. Afterwards, we had to write a 3-page paper about some communication thing I can't really remember. But like the one for film, I did it in one day. In fact, I think I did it the same day as the one for film, but my grade for this paper was 100, so that's good. Now let's move on to May 2019. This was a great month. It was also my last month of freshman year. Freshman year was overall very challenging, but I grew a lot from it. So now let's wrap it up. So to start, I want to discuss the final exam for English, which took place on Wednesday, May 8th, 2019. So this exam was quite interesting, not because of the exam itself, but because of the aftermath. So normally when our teacher announced the test was over, we would all stay quiet. However, after our English teacher told us that the test was over and that we had completed 9th grade English, we all started clapping, including her. It was definitely really unique and really funny too, as it's never happened to me at least. Anyways, I ended up making a 94 on this final, which was actually higher than I expected. So for the class, I made an 88. Not bad. Had I not been a dumbass throughout the first 3 quarters, I probably could have made an A, but still a very respectable B. Now I want to fast forward to about a week, specifically Friday, May 17th, 2019. So on this day, we had our Algebra 2 end of course exam, or EOC. I should note that EOCs are much more serious than final exams, as they're generally much longer and you get like 5 hours to take them, unlike final exams where you're only given 2 hours. They also generally have field questions, which are questions that aren't graded, but are rather used to help the state determine which questions should be added. Now, normally, there are about maybe 5 to 10 field questions per EOC. However, this test was a little funky with field questions, as every single question on this test was a field question. This is because this was the first time the state of North Carolina did an EOC for Algebra 2. So they wanted some students to take it first in order to create statistics and to conduct studies to determine how they should write the real test and what questions to include and that jazz. Therefore, this test was not applied to our final grade. We didn't know this, so some students actually used up that extra time they could be having fun. Yeah, when we found out that you bet they were disappointed. I wasn't one of them, so thank God. Now in North Carolina, you are required to take 4 EOCs in high school. 1 for Algebra 1 in 9th grade, 1 for English in 10th grade, and 1 for Biology in 10th, or 1 for Biology in 10th grade, and 1 for Algebra 2 in 11th grade. For me, it's really funny, as I only took 2 EOCs total, and only 1 in high school, as I took the Algebra 1 EOC in 8th grade, and the one for high school didn't really count, which I took the Algebra 2 one in 9th grade. So I technically could say I went through high school without taking a legit EOC. I didn't take the Biology or English one because they got cancelled, which I'll explain why later in this video. Now, let's discuss May 21st, 2019. This is the last day of school. So this day only lasted until like 11 o'clock. It started us by having an award ceremony, and it also ended with the award ceremony. It actually was the last time our school even had a school-wide award ceremony, as the last year a certain event happened that prevented it. And then today was my last day of junior year, in which we did a grade-wide award ceremony rather than a school-wide one. But anyways, this ceremony was overall pretty good. My parents were at work, my grandmother attended it though. Overall, the ceremony was pretty good. However, there was one major takeaway from it that I can't believe I forgot to mention in my freshman year Storytime back in January. I'll redo that Storytime pretty soon, don't worry. So our school's favorite book is called Big Plans. It's basically of some kid who's got big plans and managed to get the president to help with his big plans. So at this ceremony, we had the 10th grade math teacher read this book for everyone. However, one of the lines of the book says, "Listen here, bird." Our teacher in front of parents, students, teachers, and even the principal ended up accidentally reading, "Listen here, big shit." Needless to say, everyone started laughing. I of course laughed too. I mean, come on, if you were there, you would have laughed as well. My grandmother, though, laughed a little bit excessively, but overall, it was really funny. Not because he said shit, but because he said shit in an audience you don't dare cuss in front of, especially when you're a teacher. Overall, May 21st, 2019 was a good day. After leaving school, my grandmother drove me to high school where I'd have gone to had I not gone to early college. The reason we did this was so that I could turn it in a form for me to take driver's ed. I remember the lady up front telling me, "Wow, you're here early," and I told her, "Yep, it was my last day of school." Of course, she was jealous. I should also note that while school gets off in May, the rest of the state gets off in June, so that's nice. Then after I got home, I cooked a toaster strudel at like 2 in the afternoon, and mostly laid around. Now we reached summer of 2019. This is a great summer, which is good, especially before a monstrous year like 2020. Summer of 2018, while probably even better than the summer, was much shorter. This summer, however, was much longer, as I didn't have to start school back early. Since I got out of school like 2.5 weeks earlier, I did quite a lot this summer too, so let's get into it. So the rest of May was very uneventful. All I remember really doing this month was just simply laying around, as school for my sister and mom didn't end until June 7th and Dad was at work. So overall, Pretty nice having having a not house to myself for 1.5 weeks. However, there's one event I want to discuss. So freshman year was a challenge. I mean, taking college classes at only 14 years old was definitely not easy, but I still came out successful and even made A's and B's in both high school and college. Normally, my parents reward me if I make all A's, but this year, just because I was taking college classes as well, they decided to reward me for making A's and B's. Interestingly, they never awarded me in 7th grade for making all A's, but I'm not mad. I mean, I'm lucky they even did this in 6th grade, and now freshman year, so I ain't complaining. Anyways, my parents went to the store on Saturday, May 25th, 2019. There they bought me Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Then they gave it to me, and I was really confused. The reason is because I didn't have a Switch. They then said, oh, it must have been a mistake. We'll take it back. But then my dad comes to the kitchen with a big-ass box, and I open it up to see a Switch. They told me it was a reward for literally just getting through freshman year. They also promised that as long as I do well in school, they'll pay for my Switch Online subscription. This is to say that I was really happy. I think that night I stayed up to like 4 in the morning playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So for the rest of summer, I've spent most of my time on my Switch. It was great, and my Switch is still the console I use the most out of all the consoles I have. Now let's discuss June of 2019. Overall, a great month. So let's start out with June 7th, 2019. Since this was my sister's and mom's last day of school, so for the past 2.5 weeks, I literally just sat in and didn't do anything. Or 1.5 weeks, I meant. However, on this day, I actually had to get up and do something. So that morning, I woke up pretty early, as I would go with my mom to her school. So my mom is a teacher. She teaches 2nd grade right now, but at the time she actually taught 4th grade. So for the last day, I hung out with her 4th grade class. I brought my Switch, so I played some Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with them. Definitely really cool, as this was also these 4th graders' last day in elementary school, so they were off to intermediate school next year. So that was pretty fun, pretty cool as well. But then in the middle of it, me and mom had to leave to go to the intermediate school, and that's where my sister went to school. So she left someone to watch these kids as we headed over there. We watched my sister's award ceremony. She won a couple awards. She had just finished 6th grade, meaning it was her last day of intermediate school. Then we left. It's actually kind of funny though, as both me and my sister's last day of intermediate school was on June 7th. Of course, for me it was 2016 and her 2019, but still kind of funny. We might have gone out to eat that day, but I honestly can't remember the rest. So now for the last week, I really don't remember anything, but the next week I do remember stuff. In fact, I remember multiple things. So let's start out with June 17th, 2019. So this would be the first day of driver's ed. I took this class for 2 weeks, 3 hours per day. Yeah, that's a lot. One class was from 8 to 11 and the other was from 1 to 4. I was in the 1 to 4 class, thank God, but still quite a lot. Overall, this class was extremely easy and honestly just a waste of time, since I knew about everything from this class. But I mean, to get my permit, it was required, so I did it. Now, before I discuss the next day, I want to talk about the second Switch game I got. So that Friday, being June 21st, was my 15th birthday. So as an early birthday gift, that Sunday, my parents bought me Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. While far from my favorite Pokemon game, Let's Go was still a blast to play. So I remember staying up pretty late just casually sitting there playing. Now let's talk about Tuesday, June 18th, 2019. So if you watch my video on Fuge, or if you watch Tuesday's video, then you know this day was a very piss-poor day, as it was the day I lost most of my friends at church from being left out. However, 1 year later, this day was actually really awesome, and I don't really even know why I enjoyed this day so much, but I did for literally no reason. I guess it's just because like March 13th, 2018 or March 23rd, 2019, this was just one of my good days. So I was in a great mood that day. I had driver's ed from 1 to 4, which while boring, it at least wasn't bad. Then mom picked me up, and we headed over to her college. So during this time, mom was working on her master's degree. She had since obtained her master's degree just very recently, so congratulations to her. So for one of her classes, she was having to work with a partner on some book I don't remember. They had to create a presentation on it. She brought me in order to help add some pictures and some effects on it. So I did that, and afterwards, I just sat around and played Let's Go on my Switch. So for some reason though, this was so fun that I had just had to include it. Why was it fun? I literally have no idea. But oh well, I believe after they got finished, me and mom walked around the campus. So that was pretty cool. Then we got home. I literally beat Let's Go Eevee and recorded it for YouTube. Now, back in late 2018 and 19, I mostly uploaded videos of me doing hard battles in multiple Pokemon games. This, however, was actually 3 videos. The first 2 videos were of me beating Lorelei and Bruno, and the second of Agatha and Lance. And then the final for the champion. It was really fun to make these videos. However, these videos though were very significant in regards to my channel. So in July of 2018, I set restrictions on uploading. Only 1 video a week with comments and a like to dislike ratios off. These 3 videos, however, were 3 videos, like to dislike to ratios on, and comments were on too. I got quite a few comments that were really supportive and encouraging. So since then, I keep comments on as well as upload whenever the hell I want. I should also go ahead and mention that these, as well as my previous videos prior to December 22nd, 2020, is private, so you cannot watch these videos. Now, Wednesday and Thursday were pretty insignificant. Let's move on to Friday, June 21st, 2019. So this was my 15th birthday. Overall, nothing special. Driver's ed actually started at 9 and lasted till 12, because the eye doctor was there to check our eyes. But afterwards, we went to the restaurant that we went to on March 23rd. It was really fun. I didn't hear a single happy birthday being sung to me that day, so you bet it was a great birthday. Definitely better than my 14th. So now let's talk about the next week. So this week, our church did Vacation Bible School, or VBS, from June 24th, 2019 to June 28th, 2019. It's for rising 1st to 7th graders, where they, as you can expect, learn about the Bible over the summer. Yeah, pretty straightforward. I was a rising sophomore during this time, so why am I bringing this up? Well, the youth helps out with VBS. We also help set it up, running it, and helping tear it down. I helped run it. I worked as a group leader for one of the Rising's 5th grade groups. It was really fun, but it's because I worked with some kids mom taught that year. However, this would really be the final time I think I even talked to others at church, as around 1 week later, I stopped talking to others at church and began isolating myself. This especially came from due to the conflict at church, which is discussed back in April on Storytime 16 if you'd like to hear about that. Interestingly though, this year Mom is kind of having me and my sister both help with VBS. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do, as I really don't want to do anything, simply because I don't have anyone to work with, as we're required to work with another youth member. By the way, we all worked with someone else at youth, so that's why I'm a bit reluctant on doing VBS this year. However, if my friend Mason decides to work VBS, then I'll definitely want to do this. We can work together. If not, then VBS is going to be hell, as Mason really is my only friend at church. Now, back on topic. I want to talk about the last day of VBS. This was important, as remember, I'm also doing driver's ed during this time. So that day, after the kids got out, I walked over to the high school to go to driver's ed. On my way, I stopped by the convenience store to buy a family-sized bag of Doritos and a 2-liter of Dr. Pepper. I ended up eating half of the Doritos and drinking like a quarter of all the Dr. Pepper in driver's ed. Yeah, I used to eat a lot. Nowadays, I can't eat or drink that much, but it's definitely interesting how my diet worked back then. Also, we had our final exam. This was one of the easiest exams I ever took, and made a very easy 100. Now let's discuss the next week. So for the next week, we went to Delaware to visit family. So for some reason, I have some memories of this trip. Although, the only memories I have are on the way up there. I remember playing Smash Bros on my Switch the whole way up there. I also remember stopping at Firehouse Subs in Richmond, Virginia. Me and my sister sat by the window while our parents sat somewhere else. Not sure what we did, but I'm guessing we played around. I don't know. The only other memory I have of this trip was a little bit scary. So normally to get to Delaware, we cross the Chesapeake Bridge in Maryland, since Maryland is basically the only way to get to Delaware. However, I believe the bridge was closed that day, so instead we had to drive through Baltimore at like 9:30 at night. Yeah, going through a city with a murder rate of 800% higher than the US average at night does not sound very safe. For reference, Charlotte, the city I live in, its murder rate is only 20% higher than the national average. Of course, I was safe, since we weren't going out, but still pretty scary. I also remember texting my friend Ryan while driving, since everyone knows just how dangerous Baltimore is. We joked about how I'm going to get shot or get gang raped since we were driving at night. Pretty funny, but also kind of scary. Now let's move on to the next week. So I did the driving portion of driver's ed between July 8th to July 11th, 2019. So this portion was honestly quite forgettable. I just drove wherever the instructor told me, and that was that. I passed, obviously, and also got my certificate saying that I officially passed driver's ed. Now for the next week, so our youth was going to Fuge in Charleston, South Carolina. I went to Fuge in 2018, and let me tell you, it was a complete disaster. If you want to know about my experience, see Storytime 7. Anyways, I did not go to Fuge this year, and I also had no friends, so it was pretty glaring that I would be left out just like 2018, so I didn't go. But I still did something productive. So that Monday, being July 15th, 2019, I went to the DMV to get my permit. I made a perfect score on this test and got my permit, so I at least did that. So now for the rest of the summer of 2019 was very forgettable, but still enjoyable. My sister made a cheer team at the middle school, so she had a cheer camp. During this time, we were going to North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, but because of this, we canceled our trip. Now, for the rest of summer of 2019 was uneventful. Let's talk about going back to school. So I was now a sophomore. I got my schedule and just knew that this semester was going to be extremely easy, and I was right. This semester of school was super easy and relaxing. I only had 2 high school courses and 4 college courses. It overall was really easy and really fun, so let's talk about it. So the first day of school was crazy. So from that day, being Wednesday, August 7th, 2019, to Friday, August 9th, 2019, not 2017, 2019 of August 7th, we went to a city called Blowing Rock, right by New River. Yeah, try not to take that out of context. So before we left, our teacher gave us some lecture about choices, as that's what we were learning up there. Of course, I don't remember any of that shit from the lecture, as it's been almost 2 years, but I do remember the experience up at Blowing Rock. I swear, this city name is really gonna screw me up. Anyways, I won't discuss all the details, but I will mention the important ones. If you want to learn about my experience at Blowing Rock, oh my god, I hate this place. Just watch Storytime 6 for my experience. There. Anyways, I roomed with 3 buddies. Our room was basically a 1-star hotel room, but it did its job. On Thursday, we did all the activities, so at the beginning of the day, we went to the New River Research Center, or whatever the hell it's called. We looked out the balcony for like 5 minutes, and then had to record what we saw and felt, as well as draw illustrations. This will be important later on, by the way. We also did some worksheets on identifying animals. Afterwards, we actually went to that river. We collected some animals under rocks. But just imagine being one of those animals. Like you're just sitting there peacefully, and then a bunch of 15-year-olds just come over and frighten the living hell out of you. That's basically what we did. Right after this, though, we went hiking. Yup, this trip was carefully planned out. Totally, because hiking with wet shoes was definitely a good idea. Now I want to jump to that night. So at dinner, everyone was supposed to go out and have a bonfire. I knew this was happening, but I never kept track of time, and ended up staying in my room for like 45 minutes extra. I of course didn't realize this until then. Oh well, I just texted a friend and he came over to take me to the bonfire. Oh good, I mean the bonfire was optional, so I could have just simply stayed in my room. But come on, what's the fun in that? And plus, these people aren't from church, they're real friends, so might as well have some fun. The next day, we packed our stuff and headed back to Charlotte. Pretty great ride. I also had a great rest of the day. This was definitely an awesome way to begin the school year. Now, the rest of August 2019 was really uneventful. Let's move on to September of 2019. So remember when I said pay attention to the part where we looked out the balcony? Well, here we are. We had to use what we saw and create a found poem, as well as do illustrations on a poster. Pretty easy. So I should also note that this project was for a class called Seminar, which was our class for intensives, such as the trip we just did. See Storytime 17 or Storytime 6 if you're confused. Anyways, I've read my poem 1,000,000 times, so I ain't gonna read it again. But while the poem was pretty bad, it did its job, and I passed, as Seminar is only a pass or fail course. But probably the biggest thing about this project was my Seminar teacher. This was also the same teacher who said, "Listen here, big shit," to the entire school. So my poster obviously had illustrations and words. However, this man hung my poster up on the wall upside down. How? There are words on it. I know this was an accident, but holy shit, man. You do realize there are words on it, right? Like, are you blind or something? I mean, he did wear glasses, but like, he probably should get a new prescription. Next, I want to discuss the college for a second, specifically Introduction to Sociology. Now, this class was extremely boring, but I remember it mostly for the professor. So this professor was, let's just say, maybe a little bit too enthusiastic about his job. We only had about 8 weeks with him, so thank God, but he was still something. I remember in one situation where a student was just simply charging his phone. His phone was laying face down on the table, and it was on Do Not Disturb. Pretty normal, right? Well, this professor thought this kid was worse than 9/11. He went full on beast mode on this kid. Like, shit just went from 0 to 100 in a matter of nanoseconds. He then goes on to say, no, 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 as well as, it's not my policy, it's the college's, as well as, sociology is a serious subject looking for serious students. It's funny because most professors allow us to do that, so I'm not sure why this man was so offended by a phone. Oh well, there's always that one professor who is just way out there, and my sociology professor was just that one. This was really funny though. Of course we didn't laugh when it was actually happened, but we did laugh after we got out of class, as you don't see a professor freak the hell out every day. The other thing too is that we did not take sociology by choice. Our school signed us all up for it, so it was kind of a slap in the face for him. So now, next I want to discuss a really funny incident that happened in September of 2019, more specifically study hall. Now, normally we were supposed to have Earth Environmental Science during this time, but me and like 7 others already took it in 8th grade, so we had a study hall during our 4th block. So we like to call this incident the War of 214, as it took place at 214. The teacher was not there for some reason, so I think you can guess what happened. If you guessed that some students went wild, then you'd be correct. So 2 students, out of nowhere, decided to throw some random stuff at each other. It was in a joking way. They were friends, by the way. They were at opposite sides of the classroom, so we were all in the middle of the war. So we all moved out the other end of the classroom. Then the boys started chasing each other around the class. And remember, they didn't get in trouble because there was no teacher with us. So you bet we had a blast. I mean, who wouldn't love seeing pencils being thrown across the classroom and two boys chasing each other? And remember, we're the smart class. Yeah, that was a really entertaining day that day. Not sure what day exactly, but still really funny. Another thing in September I also want to mention is Beta Club. So sometime in mid-August, I got a letter from my seminar teacher. This letter was an invitation to join Beta Club. Our seminar teacher was the Beta Club leader, by the way. Beta Club is basically a club for honor students, where you get to do some community service and other stuff. It's for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. They look at our grades from freshman year. Since I had a GPA of over 3.5, I got invited. I took the invitation and joined the club. Beta Club looks good on college applications and for scholarships. I also get an extra cord at graduation for Beta Club. We would also have meetings every Tuesday until January where something would happen to our leader I'll talk about later. So to congratulate the new inductees, our school hosted an induction ceremony in late September. I was the first student to be called, since they called us in order of our last name. So I get to brag about that. We also got served cake. I didn't need that much, as me and my family left early to go out to eat together. However, I managed to impress many of my peers who were also being inducted, so this was a semi-formal event. I wore a sports jacket, a nice shirt, and some dress pants. I managed to impress everyone. A lot of people talked about how good I looked. There was even some girls who complimented me on how I looked, so that was really interesting. The next day at school, a Friday, I got a bunch of people coming to me talking about the night before and how well I dressed. So I had that going for me for that time. Now, October and November of 2019 were very uneventful. My dad went to Germany for a business trip sometime in November, but that's all I really remember from that month. So let's jump to December of 2019, more specifically Christmas 2019. So this was a great Christmas. Got some new Switch games, a new chair, and overall it was a very great Christmas. That's really all worth mentioning for December. Now, I want to jump to January of 2020. 2020 was one of the craziest years ever. In fact, I'll argue it was just as crazy as 2018, if not crazier. So to start off, 2020, we did an intensive, just like when we went to Blowing Rock, but it was a stay-at-school intensive. So for this intensive, we learned about healthy choices. You know, eating healthy, exercising, not doing drugs, not drinking, not vaping, that kind of stuff. We did an intensive on that, but we were given our assignment for the intensive, write a children's book about healthy choices. Now, I love writing. I wouldn't be doing Storytime if I hated it. Like, the average script for these videos is about 7,000 words long. But for kiddos, hell no! I don't write for children. I like using big words that I don't even understand, and I also like to cuss in my writings too. How do you expect me to write for a bunch of second graders? Anyways, the way it worked was that we were paired up with a partner. I was fortunate enough to be paired up with an artistic girl, so I simply was the author and she was the illustrator, as I suck at drawing, and she sucks at writing. Our teachers planned on us doing both of the jobs, but considering my partner wasn't a good writer and I wasn't a good artist, it's pretty glaring on what we should do. So I wrote the book on exercising. I'm not going to read it to y'all, but I did read it in Storytime 6, so y'all can watch that Storytime if you want to hear it. Anyways, the way I wrote this book was that I originally wrote it in my own writing style, as I've mastered my unique writing style and know how to write it with it. Afterwards, I scaled it down for an 8-year-old to understand. I also removed all the swearing in it as well, as my original draft had a few dirty words that elementary school students should probably not hear, since it was written in my writing style. My partner, of course, illustrated every page. However, on January 29th, 2020, our progress came to a halt, so I won't explain the situation too much, as not only has it been resolved, but I also really don't like to talk about it since it's so disturbing. I recommend watching either Storytime 5 or Storytime 17 if you want to hear more about it. But basically, our seminar teacher got arrested, so therefore, in about 2 weeks, our school would get a new seminar teacher for us, as well as a new 10th grade math teacher, as that's what he taught. We also had to get a new beta club leader. After this incident, I haven't actually attended a beta club meeting since, although that's mostly because of coronavirus. The new teacher was a retired math teacher. He was also really nice and really cool. This man loved his job, so much so that he actually got out of retirement and continues to teach at our school, so something good happened from this situation. Now, I want to briefly discuss February 2020. So overall, this month really didn't have much going for it, but I do remember that this was kind of a low point in terms of the post-depression period part 2. It mostly came from biology, which completely kicked me in the ass in the third quarter. It's also the main reason I often say biology is my least favorite subject. But I mean, it wasn't that bad. I was still enjoying life. No pun intended. But there are two things from February of 2020 that I want to briefly discuss that were really funny. So one of them was in study hall, and this kid, who was also one of the boys who ran around the class, he freaking punched his Chromebook out of nowhere. Yeah, we're just doing schoolwork, and then he punches his Chromebook. He punched it because it was slow. Story of my life. What makes this even funnier is that he's the kid you really wouldn't expect to do it, as I believe he's ranked 2nd in our grade. Yeah, pretty funny. I took a picture of his Chromebook, as well as of him with his Chromebook. Pretty funny situation overall. The other situation takes place maybe about a week later. So our county had a tornado. Not just that, but it was raining intensely hard. Apparently, most schools in the county all went on lockdown and had their students do the tornado precautions. However, our school just ignored this and simply kept class going. We were in study hall, by the way. Our study hall teacher was not in the room either, so you bet we did something funny. So as a class, we mostly made jokes about the weather. We even looked out the window and saw that outside was actually starting to flood, so we called it Zach's Pool, since I was the first person to see it. What's so ironic about this is that I actually have a pool at home. We did eventually get out of school early though, once the tornado calmed down and all. Now let's talk about the end of the post-depression period, part 2. So it ended on March 15, 2020, and I think you could easily guess why. So this is when the coronavirus pandemic began. As a result, we had to do online school. For me, it wasn't that bad, but considering I was no longer with my friends and nothing was normal, it definitely was not fun. Also, seminar was canceled due to the pandemic, so therefore we never finished our books. Now, remember when I said that I never took a single legit EOC in high school? Well, coronavirus is the main reason why. So I was supposed to take the English and Biology EOC this year, but the state waived all standardized tests, so therefore I didn't have to take it. It also applies to junior year as well, which I'll discuss more about next week. So that was the end of the post-depression period, part 2. So where is part 3? Well, more than likely, part 3 will never happen. The reason that it's simply been over 3 years since I've been suicidal, so it would be a little strange that I'm super happy because I was no longer in it. But it's not to say I'm no longer happy that I'm not suicidal anymore. I'm very happy. I wake up every day, even on bad days, thankful that I'm happy and that I can live another day, and a day that is better than March 8th, 2018. But the best way to describe my mood is that I'm stable. I'm not overly happy, and I ain't overly sad either. It's really just a mix, which I think is good. Sometimes being overly happy can make bad things stick out, just like Fuge during post-depression period part 1. But overall, I'm doing very well right now. Anyways, that's all I got for today's story time. Next week on May 28th, 2021, I'll be talking about junior year. Anyways, that's all I got, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!